UFOs and the aliens that inhabit them haunt our sleep and fascinate our waking thoughts. Are they the stuff of fiction, or is the truth really out there? Here are 3 subscriber-submitted stories from those who have claimed to have witnessed extraterrestrials firsthand. I have never told anyone this story before. I must have been about 6 years old when it happened. It was the evening and my dad rushed into the living room. He said, "Have you seen those flashing lights in the sky?" My dad, sister and I rushed outside. There, in the sky above us, were lights going around in a circle. Red, blue and white lights. Although I was very young at the time and I didn't really know what was going on, I was confused by what I was seeing. I remember my dad telling me that they looked like a UFO. It wasn't until I was older that I realized what UFO meant. Everyone on our street was outside, their eyes turned to the sky. At least 20 people watched this thing hover silently above us. Before too long, the police showed up and ushered everyone back inside. Some people refused to leave. They were fixated on the lights. They continued to go round and round in a circle, silently, as we moved away. Just after we went back into the house, there was a loud bang. I believe it was supersonic. It set all the car alarms off. Whatever had been in the sky was now gone. To this day, it still sends shivers down my spine. For much of my childhood, I lived with my great-grandparents on their farm in South Texas. The year was 1972. I was 12 years old and my younger brother was 10. My brother and I slept in the middle of the house on single beds. Our bedroom window faced east, overlooking the 13 acres of field that my grandfather used to grow feed for his animals. It was spring, and the field had just been turned, furrowed and seeded. On that particular night, my brother and I went to bed around 9 p.m. However, neither of us could sleep. Before bedtime, we had both seen some strange objects flying through the sky. We had been with adults at the time, including my uncle, who was a major in Strategic Air Command. One of the objects had looked like a ball of burning fire. My uncle reported it to the police department, who told him the Weather Bureau claimed it was a meteor burning up upon entering the atmosphere. However, the fiery sphere had travelled from east to west, across the horizon. Around that time, we had also been getting lots of jets from the nearby airfield flying low over our farm. In hindsight, my time in the military has made me realise that the jets may have been flying low to avoid the radar. At the time, my uncle had pointed out one particular aircraft that he didn't recognise. As he was a rated officer and would have been familiar with all known types of military aircraft, he was confused. This too he phoned in, not as an alien ship or anything like that, but as an aircraft he couldn't identify. The Air Force Base scrambled 2 jets that broke the sound barrier to get to our area, but the craft had already disappeared. As bizarre as it had been, strange objects in the sky were only the start of my brother and I's encounter. One evening, whilst watching TV with one of my relatives who had seen the fireball, there was a loud stomping on the roof. The footsteps ran from the back to the front porch, along the main beam of the house. It sounded like a giant. Startled, my older relative grabbed my grandfather's lever-action rifle and told us to stay in the house. He went outside. When he came back, he told us that there was no one there. It was after he went back to his Marine base that I started having the dreams. I dreamt about doctors with masks on doing something to my teeth. I also began sleepwalking. My grandmother, who would rise before dawn, would find me standing in the hallway that connected her room to ours. One day I asked my brother if he had any reoccurring dreams about doctors. He told me he did, every night. We promised each other that the next time it happened, we would both try to shout out so we would wake up to see if the dreams were real. It was evening and my brother and I had just got to bed. My grandparents were on the back porch, just behind our bedroom. My grandmother in her chair and footstool, and my grandfather in his rocking chair. Just before we fell asleep, I noticed that there was a set of car headlights going down the road at the far end of the field, toward the house where my aunt, uncle, and 4 cousins lived. It was very dark, so all we could see were the headlights and what they illuminated. I thought the driver might have been drunk, since the vehicle's high beams were on. When you live in the country, you learn all about those who live around you. What kind of car they drive, what time they leave and come home, who belongs there and who doesn't. You have to, because there is only a sheriff and deputies to call, and they are around 10 miles away. Strangers mean trouble. They could steal your farm equipment, your animals, or break into your home. The rule of the country is to keep an eye out for your neighbor, in the hope that they will return the favor. My brother and I watched the headlights go towards my uncle's house. Usually his dogs would come out barking, but this time they were silent. As we watched, the headlights stopped. It looked like the vehicle was trying to turn around and go back the other way down the road. It was then that my heart skipped a little. I sensed someone watching us, like they knew we were watching them out the window. The light stopped and turned our way. I joked to my brother that it looked like the drunk was going to run into our barbed wire fence and get stuck in the drainage ditch. Regardless, the lights kept coming towards the house. The idiot was now coming across the field. He must really be drunk, I told my brother, and would probably have to pay my grandfather for the fence he had destroyed. The field was furrowed, but the headlights stayed level and slowly approached the house directly towards the window my brother and I were watching from. I wondered where our dogs were, as they should have been barking by now. There were 2 more fences between the vehicle and our house. I doubted the driver would go through them both. The headlights reached the first fence and stopped. "He's done," I told my brother. Then, to our horror, the lights began to raise up off the ground and passed over the top of the fence. We saw this very clearly, as the lights were now approximately 100 yards away. We shouted at the same time, "Monster!" Terrified, we called to our grandparents. By now, the vehicle was making a churning noise, like industrial motors running. It was so loud that my brother and I were shouting at the top of our lungs and could barely hear ourselves. We fled the room and hid under the kitchen table. There was still no response from our grandparents. The door leading from the kitchen outside to the back porch was wide open. The effort it took me to leave the hiding place, go over to the door, close and lock it, with who knows what watching from the other side, was tremendous. We weren't safe. I got my brother to stop screaming, telling him if we weren't quiet the monsters would surely find us. I prayed to God to send an angel to save us. I closed my eyes, putting my fingers in my ears, and waited to see if we would be found. Eventually the sound went away, gradually getting more distant. I wept with gratitude that we had been spared. I heard my grandparents talking from the porch. My grandmother asked my grandfather if he had closed the door. I crawled out from under the kitchen table and went to where they were sitting. Why hadn't they come inside of the house? Had they not heard my brother and I screaming for them? Had they not heard the machine? My grandmother looked clueless. Using my full name, she asked me what I was going on about. Switching tactics, I told my grandfather I had seen someone drive off the road and break through our fence. He went outside and then came back saying there was no one there and the fence was fine. I was shocked. It just couldn't be. I went back into the kitchen to get my brother to help me convince our grandparents of what had happened, but he was asleep under the kitchen table. I helped him back into his bed. Exhausted, I fell asleep in my own immediately. The next day, when I was alone with my brother, I asked him to come with me to tell our grandparents what had happened. My brother acted as if he didn't understand. When I related the events to him, he said he didn't remember any such thing, and that I was talking crazy. But I wasn't crazy. I know what had happened last night. Why was I the only one to remember it? A month later, whilst I was walking up the road to visit my cousins, I once again got the feeling of being watched. I knew exactly where to look to see what was watching me. It was above me on my right. In the movie Starman, the spaceship was a large reflective sphere. That was what I was looking at right above my grandfather's field. At first I thought it was a planet because of the reflection of the ground below on its reflective surface. Then I understood it was something not of this world. It hung without a noise above the field. I stood there on the road, staring at it. Then I got angry. I shouted at it, "Okay, you got me. Now what?" The sphere just gradually vanished into a cloud bank and disappeared. I did not mention the second event to anyone because after the reaction of my own family from the first, there was no point. No one would believe me. I know how it sounds. I know this is unbelievable. But I swear on the Bible that these events did occur and that I relay them to you in complete truth as far as my memory allows. I was abducted by aliens. Many years ago, I worked the night shift as a security guard. On that particular night, I had left early, so it was around 2 AM in the morning. The road I travelled on, although a main road, was surrounded by countryside on both sides. In the daytime, you could see farmers' fields for miles and miles. Then I could only see the reflection of my car's lights on the tarmac. I remember it was a clear night. As usual, the road was empty of other cars. So when I came around a corner to see a car blocking the road, I was surprised. The driver's door was wide open and its lights were on. At first I thought it had crashed. Only when I stopped did I see a man standing by the gateway into a field. He was just standing there, staring into the darkness. I saw nothing. Then, as if from nowhere, a bright light beamed into the field. The light was intense and pencil thin. As I got out the car and approached the man, he shouted, "Did you see that?" He pointed across the field to a far hedgerow to where the light was. Almost as soon as the light appeared, it went out. However, there was no residue, no fade as the light absorbed into the blackness of the night. It just disappeared perfectly, unnaturally. My heart pounded, confused at what I was seeing. Within a matter of moments, the light was back, once again intense and pencil thin. Once again it disappeared suddenly without residue. Both me and the man stood there in awe. This happened 4 or 5 more times before the light disappeared for good. It was a very still night, with no sounds or movement for miles. Neither one of us could make sense of what we had just witnessed. A couple of days later, I saw a strange report in the local newspaper. There had been dozens of sightings of bright lights in the sky that same night I stopped at the field, including reports from personnel at Royal Air Force bases. They claimed to have seen a craft flying at about 200 feet, which fired a narrow beam of light which swept the ground. Since that day, no one has been able to explain what I and many others saw that night. All I know is that it will stay with me forever. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like and share with others who may be interested. If you can't wait until my next video, why not check out the ones on screen now? Remember, the more you know, the more there is to fear.